that I wanted to be there to explain the entire film, something that would have all the pieces fall into place and let it make sense. But I have no idea what that is right now, so I'm just going to give you a plot summary, which I usually don't like to do, but since there was practically no plot at all in the film, it will only take a minute. There are basically four characters. There's James Spader. I can't remember the characters' names in the film. They're pretty irrelevant anyway. They hardly ever talk to each other. There's James Spader and his wife, played by Deborah Unger, who's a Canadian actress. They're the typical modern couple, professional couple. They're both having extramarital affairs, which is not unusual. But they actually talk about them to each other. They describe their encounters with each other, which is somewhat strange, but compared to what comes up later on in the film, it's really nothing at all. James Spader, early on in the film, is driving along and gets into a head-on collision with another car. Inside the other car is Holly Hunter, and her husband dies. Actually, this is the best scene in the film that I really liked. It's really visceral. Her husband comes flying through James Spader's windshield and lands in his front seat, and it's really gruesome, and it really feels like a car accident. Holly Hunter, anyway, apparently has this strange fetish or something with sex in cars. We find out pretty soon that this is what she likes to do, have sex with strangers in cars, which is kind of what... This is the beginning of the part of the film that doesn't make any sense, or at least doesn't seem to make any sense on first viewing. Holly Hunter and James Spader end up having sex and becoming lovers, and she eventually takes him to this strange, dark alleyway at night in a typical Cronenberg scene, where she introduces him to her band of fetish, car fetish people. It's very hard to explain exactly what these people do, but they're all associated with they're attracted to car accidents, and often there's a sexual connotation with some of them or all of them or whatever, and so they watch tapes of car accidents on TV, and they hunt them out on the highways, and they go around and they take pictures of the people while the firefighters are yanking the victims out of the cars and stuff like that. So the other main character is Elias Koteas. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's a Canadian actor as well. He plays kind of like the leader of this band of weird, kinky sexual car people. And I think he's kind of supposed to be like one of these psychoanalyst doctors in the 1950s films who always come on at the end and explain why the murderer acted the way he did or whatever. He tries to be the voice from Cronenberg to us as to why these people are attracted to sex and cars and car accidents and things like that. But it never really makes any sense, and I don't think he ever really explains anything to us. But I suppose that trying to explain why someone would be sexually attracted while standing at the scene of a car accident is a little like trying to explain why someone would be attracted to having sex with a 4-year-old. It completely doesn't make any sense to us at all. And you're either into it or you're not, and that's the way you feel towards these people. You never get inside their heads or understand why they can possibly be attracted to this kind of thing. But I think Cronenberg knows this, and he's not trying to let us identify with the characters. Instead, he's trying to use it as a metaphor for what's happening in the world, in our society today. And I've read about this, in various articles about the film coming up and that. So I think this is what the intention is, to sort of draw some kind of connection between the way these people are acting and use it as a metaphor for the way we all act, the way we relate to technology and cars and that in our world today. But and this is my point of the film. And I have a little concluding thing here, which sounds really great, so I'm just going to read it. I kept waiting for Cronenberg to toss me a bone to show me why I should spend 2 hours watching these people. And all I wanted was a hint as to why their behavior was relevant to my life. This is where the film fails. It didn't convince me that these people were anything more than a group of eccentric people into kinky sex. Which is something that makes for interesting pornography, but disappointing cinema. That's my review. I give it a 4 out of $8 simply because it's not a great film, but it's not a terrible film. It's somewhere in between that deserves repeated viewings if you have the time.
Okay. Well, you know, the first time I heard about this movie was last Monday, I think. Cronenberg was on Dini Perry.
Mm-hmm.
And Dini Perry said that she went to see the movie and she walked out of it. But then that's Dini Perry, so who cares? You know? But and since then I've heard mixed reviews, so you have to expect that with Cronenberg's movies because they're kind of weird, you know.
Definitely, and if you're going to see it, just remember that there's absolutely no plot, there's no narrative. It's almost an experimental film. It starts off with a little bit of a storyline, and then the last 90 minutes is just continually people having sex and all kinds of combinations. The 4 characters, you know, there's every kind of sex you can imagine in every kind of position and location that you can imagine. That's all it is, and then you're supposed to draw something from this, but I don't know what exactly.
Sounds interesting. All right, thanks a lot.
Okay.
And we'll be back after this.
Left me a mute.
The Blues Brothers is a most unique musical that came out in 1980, and it is also the subject for this week's movies we would have liked to review when they came out, but we were probably too young to do so when they did. So we're going to do it now. Okay, so last semester, if you can remember that far, I did a show on Grease, and in that show I said that I didn't really like musicals for a number of reasons, and I said that there were only 2 musicals that I really liked, which were Grease and Singing in the Rain. But those 2 have now increased by 1 because this summer I saw the Blues Brothers for the first time, and I completely fell in love with it because it was really different from anything I had seen before. It was funny, they had good music, and I just liked the whole thing. The Blues Brothers starred Dan Aykroyd as Elwood Blues and the late John Belushi as the Jolly Jake. Now, if you go back in history, you have to go back to Saturday Night Live because that's where this skit started. The Blues Brothers was a skit on Saturday Night Live, and it became the Blues Brothers became the in-house Saturday Night Live band for a while, and then they decided to do a movie. Now they were the first Saturday Night Live skit to become a movie. Since then, you know, there's been Wayne's World, there's been really bad ones like Coneheads, and you don't want to even think about the other ones. But so it was the first Saturday Night Live skit to become a major motion picture, and what an impressive departure that was, because it was a good movie, like I said. What happens is that Elwood and Jake are 2 hoodlums that were part of a band at one point, and since then Jake has gone to jail. So what happens in this movie is that Jake comes out of jail, and they go to their orphanage where they grew up, and they find out that the orphanage is going to be closed down unless they can raise enough money to keep it open. So what they do is that they go around and they try to get their old band back together and go on tour to raise that money to keep the orphanage open. So they do so, and as they do so, they run into a whole bunch of great cameos. People like Ray Charles, James Brown, Cab Calloway, John Candy, Carrie Fisher, Aretha Franklin, and Frank Oz. And check out Frank Oz, because in this movie he plays the security officer at the jail where Jake is. And if you take a look at a movie called Trading Places, he plays exactly the same role. He's a security officer in a police station where Dan Aykroyd is being held for whatever reason. You have to see the movie. But it's kind of a funny thing when you see Frank Oz playing the same part twice. So Yeah, so it was a good movie. Go see it. And there's a rumor going around that the Blues Brothers 2 will be made. I don't know if that's true or if it's just a rumor, but apparently it's going to star Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi's brother, Jim Belushi. And it should come out in the next few years. So that's still a rumor. I mean, we still have to see if that's going to happen. But if it does, I hope it'll be as good as this movie because, you know, it was a good movie. So I give it $6 out of 8. Now, for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about when I give prices out like this, it's just like out of $8, you have to pay $8 these days to go see a movie. Well, how much would you be willing to pay again if you would go out and see this movie? Is it like $6? Is it a full 8? If it's $8, it means that, you know, it's just a really, really good movie. 7 is a bit less. 6 is a pretty good movie, and this fits into that category. So, you know, rent it, why don't you? So, now, without further ado, let me present to you El Jolly Jake and his brother Elwood Blues, the Blues Brothers.
Well, I heard about the fella you've been dancing with all over the neighborhood. So why didn't you ask me, baby? Or didn't you think I could? Well, I know that the boogaloo is out of sight, but the shing-a-ling's a thing tonight. But if that was you and me out there, baby, I would have shown you how to do it right. Do it right. Uh-huh. Do it right. Do it right. Shake your tail feather. Come on, let me see you shake your tail feather. Come on, let me see you shake your tail feather. Come on. Come on, baby. Come on. Yeah, come on, baby. All right. Do the twist. Do the fly. Oh, do the swim. And do the bird. Well, do the duck. Do the monkey. Hey, hey, what is it? And what about the fruit? Do the mashed potato. What about the boogaloo? Oh, the Roni Maroni. Come on, let's do the twist.
Okay, man. We'll take these axes.
Naturally. And as usual, I gotta take an IOU.
And that's it again for this week. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another couple of movies to review, so stay tuned for that. And until then, don't forget to shut the door when you leave the office.